Alright, number 6a, remember for synthetic division we're dividing by x minus a. So since this is plus 2 right here, we know that a is negative 2. So that's what goes inside the little box. Then we write the coefficients in descending order, 1, negative 8, and 6. Bring down the 1. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Add the negative 8 and the negative 2. That gives you negative 10. Negative 2 times negative 10 is 20, and then you add the 20 and the 6, so that's 26. Remember, this is your remainder, and this is the other factor, the quotient. So this means I have x minus 10 plus 26, my remainder, over the divisor, which is x plus 2. So that would be the answer. And because we got a remainder, we could say that x plus 2 is not a factor. Because remember, we need a remainder 0 for it to be a factor. So B, the same thing, we're going to divide this time by positive 3, because that's what the A value is, positive 3. So 3 here. And then negative 1, we go in descending order, then negative 7, 6. Notice how there's no x term, so we have to put a placeholder, and then the constant. Okay, so bring down the negative 1. 3 times negative 1, negative 3, you add, you get negative 10. 3 times negative 10 is negative 30, you add, you get negative 24. 3 times negative 24 is negative 72. You add, you get negative 72. And then 3 times negative 72 is negative 216. And you add, you get negative 217. And that's my remainder. So the answer would be negative x cubed minus 10x squared minus 24x minus 72, and then minus 217 over x minus 3. That's my remainder over my quotient. So here's the answer. Because we got a remainder, which is not 0, then we know that x minus 3 is not a factor. Okay? Alright, so I set up 7a with long division, because you cannot use synthetic division for this one. Well, actually, you could if you divide everything by 2. Okay, the dividend and the divisor, everything by 2, you could do it, but we're just going to keep it as it is. So you ask yourself, what do you have to multiply the 2x by to get 2x cubed? And so the answer would be x squared. So I'll put it right here. Use a different color, x squared. And so now you multiply x squared times 2x plus 4, so that gives you 2x cubed plus 4x squared. So now we're going to subtract, so I'm going to change the sign. When you subtract, you add the opposite, so that's minus. And this one is minus. Okay, so what do we get? We get this cancels out, and 14 minus 4 is 10. And then you bring down the next term, which is negative 4x. So what do you have to multiply 2x by to get 10x squared? The answer would be 5x. Okay, so then that gives me 10x squared plus 20x. Now we're going to subtract by adding the opposite, so this becomes a minus, and this positive also becomes a minus. So now I have this cancels out, and negative 4 and negative 20 is negative 24x. We bring down the next term, negative 48. And then what do you have to multiply the 2x by to get negative 24x? That would be negative 12. And you multiply negative 24x minus 48. When you add, when you subtract, which means adding the opposite, this is plus and this is plus, you get remainder 0. So the answer is x squared, the quotient, and here. Okay, and that's it. There's no remainder. So 2x plus 4 is a factor of the cubic. Okay, so now we're going to set up number B, or 7B. Alright, so 3x times 4x cubed would give me 12x to the fourth. So 4x cubed right here. So that gives me 12x to the fourth minus 4x cubed. So we're going to subtract by adding the opposite. So this is negative and this is positive. So that gives me 0 here and 27x cubed. Bring down the next term. So 3 times what gives you 27, that's 9, and then x squared. So I get 27x cubed minus 9x squared. When I subtract by adding the opposite, both terms cancel. I get 0, so then I have to bring down not just one term, but the next two terms. Okay, so 3x times what gives you 15x? That's 5. So 15x minus 5. We're going to subtract by adding the opposite. So that gives you 0 here and 9 right here. So that's your remainder. So the answer would be 4x cubed plus 9x squared plus 5 plus the remainder over the quotient. Over the divisor, sorry. So that's a divisor right there. And that's the answer. Alright, so it says for A, if P of 1 equals 0, then R is a factor of S. Well, it can't be because it would have to be, for this to be true, the sign between the x and the 1 will have to be negative. So this is false. B, on the other hand, says if P of negative 1 equals 0, then R is a factor of S. So that would be true because in this case, the A value would be negative 1, because that's what it is, and this is negative 1, so this would be true. Synthetic substitution can be used to determine if R is a factor of S. That's true. We can use synthetic substitution for that. Alright, so finding the inverse, remember there are 4 steps. The first one is change the f of x to y. The second one is solve for x, so I'm going to add 5. So I've got y plus 5 equals 3x, so I got to divide by 3. And so now I've got x by itself. Once you do that, the third step is switch the x and the y. And finally, the fourth step is change the y to function notation. So it's the inverse, so it's f inverse of x equals x plus 5 over 3. And you can keep it as a single fraction like this or separate it. It's up to you. Okay, letter B, you have same steps. We're going to switch the f of x to y. Now we're going to solve for x. So first thing I'm going to do is multiply by 4. So that cancels the 4 right there. So now I've got 4y, 3x minus 2. So I'm going to add 2. So 4y plus 2 equals 3x. Now I'm going to divide by 3, like that. So now x is by itself, so now I'm going to switch the x and the y. Let me write it like this first. 4y plus 2 over 3. I'm going to switch the x and the y. And now change the y to function notation. Now remember what I said, you could separate it on letter A, you could do the same thing on B, so that would be 4/3 x plus 2/3, like that. So either one of these is fine. Just know that they're the same. So if you see one or the other as one of your choices on the test, on the final, then you're in good shape. If you could recognize that they're the same thing, that both of these are the same. Alright, letter C. We have, let me switch it over. The y, the f of x becomes y. And so now I'm going to add 4. So y plus 4 equals 3/8 x. So I'm going to multiply by 8 over 3, so I'm going to multiply by 8 over 3. And so this one right here, let me see. I'll just do it on this side, 8 over 3. So 8 over 8, 3 over 3 is gone. Distribute the 8 over 3. So don't forget, guys, you have to distribute here and here, okay? So you get 8 third y plus 32 over 3 equals x. Switch the x and the y. So 8 third x plus 32 over 3 equals y. Now switch the y to function notation, so I'll just put it on the left side. Equals 8 third x plus 32 over 3. And that would be the final answer. And you can combine it as a single fraction. You could write 8x plus 32 all over 3. Okay? Okay, so we're factoring now. So you always, every time you factor, you always look for a GCF other than 1 first. So in letter A, problem A, I noticed that there's a 2y squared in common in each term, so I'm going to take it out. Oops. 2y squared. So that leaves me with 6x squared plus x minus 2. Okay, because I factored out 2y squared from each term. So now you check here, is this factorable? So negative 12x squared. Factors of negative 12 that add up to positive 1 are negative 3x and positive 4x. So I'm going to use the little box. 6x squared, negative 3x, 4x, negative 2. In the first row, I can factor out a 3x. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x, and 2x times 2 is positive 4x. And then I check, is negative 1 times positive 2 equal to negative 2? The answer is yes. So I write my final answer. It's going to be 2. Don't forget the GCF that you took out at the beginning. That's part of the problem, so you don't ignore it. Okay, right here. And then 2x minus 1, and that would be your factored form. B, this is the difference of two squares. So I'm going to factor it x squared plus 25, and then x squared minus 25. Now, it says factor completely, so that means that we have to factor even the sum of squares, because now you guys know about imaginary numbers. So this one factors x plus 5i and x minus 5i. And then the second one, this one right here, is just simply the difference of two squares, so it'd be x plus 5 and then x minus 5. So this is a long factored form right here. Okay, letter C is a sum of cubes. So the cube root of 8x cubed is 2x, and the cube root of 125 is 5. Okay, so this is where you use the SOAP strategy. So we write 2x, 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 and then 5, 5, 5. Then you pair them up. So these two, and then these two. Okay, so we're going to write 2x, 5, that's the binomial, and then 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times 5 is 10x. 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, so it's running out of room. And then so we use SOAP, so that's same sign, opposite sign, always positive. So same sign, that's plus. This would be minus, and this is plus. And that would be the answer.